This is The Guide Gals, a modern, wedding-focused podcast by the experts at Here Comes the Guide. I'm Chelsea, a designer and inspired creative who's probably racked up over 9,000 hours on Pinterest and the friend who's going to shoot it to you straight.
And I'm Caroline, a social media manager who is obsessed with dogs as ring bearers and will inevitably cry over your wedding video. We've seen it from all sides. We've been brides, planners, bridesmaids, and have worked with standout brands throughout the industry.
Think of us as an extension of your wedding party and hang out with us as we share the ins, outs, ups, and downs of the road to I do.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Guide Gals podcast. Today we're talking about everything you need to know for an expedited timeline.
Yes, we have seen a trend where couples are wanting to kind of fast track their planning process and they don't want to wait. Not everyone wants to necessarily wait like a year or more between getting engaged and actually getting married. I think like the marriage is the focus more so, which I think is great. So we are going to talk about planning a wedding in a really short timeline today.
Yeah. Honestly, a lot of times you think of like the perfect timeline being at the very least 6 months, but maybe as long as a year, 2 years. But of course, life happens and it's very real. And maybe you have a military spouse and you had to get married quickly, or you're moving, or whatever else is going on in your life that has made it a quicker timeline. Or maybe you're just like, no, I don't care for all of the months of planning and waiting. I just want to get married.
Yeah.
That could be the case too.
Yeah, whatever the reason is, we're going to get into it. We have a full checklist for you today in how to get married or how to pull off a wedding really in 90 days or less.
Yeah. And don't forget, we also do have a free printable to download on our site that will give you the full checklist, the full timeline. And that is a really incredible resource if you fall into this bucket of a shorter time frame. Before we break all of those details out, though, we are, of course, going to talk about our beverage of the day. Chelsea, what do you got?
I'm drinking a Diet Coke, and I have a suspicion that you're also drinking a Diet Coke.
Here's the thing, though. Yes, do indeed have my crispy Diet Coke. My sister and I last night tried to do, I think she calls it like a dirty Diet Coke, but it's just like dirty soda. And you put flavoring and or maybe even creamer in it. And so we did
Tell me more.
We did coconut and caramel creamer with a Diet Coke. Is an insane combo. It is so that's what I'm doing right now, and I'm gonna pour it.
Insane good.
It was really good. Actually let me pour it back in together so I can try and describe what it tastes like. And I know there are a lot of places out there that do this. Like I was traveling recently and I was in Tucson. And I was searching where the nearest Swig was because
I want to try that. I want to try so
Swig
bad.
So bad. So I was looking at some of like the things on their menu, and I was like, there wasn't one near me in Tucson. They're all in like northern Arizona, and I was in southern Arizona. Blah blah blah. But I was like so intrigued by the thought process, and my sister and I tried it last night, and yeah, our thought process so far is it's pretty good.
Is it a specific creamer that you bought to do this, or is this one that you're using in your coffee too? Your coffee too.
Yeah.
I keep seeing ads for like Dr. Pepper plus a creamer. These might be fake. I don't know what I'm seeing on the internet, but like I keep seeing like things where it's like a specific creamer, like a partner with Dr. Pepper, a specific creamer that they're making to put in soda. And
I know they have a coconut Dr. Pepper coming out soon, and that's real.
Is that what I'm thinking of?
Maybe, but I would also
wrong.
No, because there are Dr. Pepper has been really trying to step up its game and stuff with its assorted flavors. Now, I will say sometimes I'm like, do not mess with what's already good. But my husband does love the it's like strawberries and cream.
I love it so much. Yeah. It's so good.
See, okay,
it's so delicious.
That is worth it. There are definitely been some old flavors that have retired from other places that I'm like, yeah, that was fine. That can go. Although I never got a chance to try the cinnamon Coke, and I wish I could have. Anyways, but there are some weird things that come out. I will say though, and I would bet a lot of money that I will be obsessed with the coconut Dr. Pepper. I love coconut. I do love Dr. Pepper.
I'll be trying it.
I can't describe how this tastes, but it's just good.
I'm so happy for you.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I would recommend. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I love it. It's very good.
Okay, so now we are going to get into our expedited timeline here. We're going to start off at the point where you're going to be 10 to 12 weeks until your wedding. So when you're on such a short timeline, most of the heavy lifting will need to be done up front. And just right off the bat, too, I want to mention you're going to have to learn that if you're planning a wedding in a really short amount of time, you have to be flexible and you have to be adaptable. You can't be super rigid in everything that you want, because just plain and simple, you're not going to be able to have everything that you could possibly have if you were waiting maybe a full year, of like having a full year to plan things and, have things come together. A lot of things in the wedding industry are like almost like built on, I think, like more of that longer timeline, and they just take that long to have. So I want to mention that right at the top. And once again, right at the top too, this is going to be like where you're going to need to get the bulk of your stuff done, is right at the beginning here. So number one, you're going to want to establish a budget and stick to it. We talk about budgeting all the time. It remains the same for whatever length of time planning that you have. Like, we are seriously, make a budget. And if you want more information on this, we'd love to give it to you. We have other episodes on this. Our very first episode that we have is how to create a wedding budget. It is totally worth a listen. And you have to think, like, if you're having your budget set in place, you're going to be able to start your marriage off on the right financial foot. This is so important. We have lots of free resources, printables on this as well. So check that out. But yeah, figure out what your bottom line is and figure that out fast. Figure that right away. That is step one. Next, you're going to put together your guest list with that budget in mind. We talk about this in other episodes as well. We get more detailed on this, but just remember that with a tight time frame, your guests might already have plans or whatever. So this is going to be like a last minute thing, especially if you have people from out of town. So keep that in mind. Be flexible. Be adaptable. Find your wedding style. That's next. So pick a color palette, pick a theme if you're going to have some sort of theme, or at least like keyword that you're trying to stick to. Get on Pinterest, figure out what you like, do a little bit of creative research for yourself, and figure out what that style is going to be like. And then once you know that style, you know your budget, you know how many people you're going to want to accommodate for your day, it's time to pick a venue. So set your date. Once again, a lot of venues are going to be booked out, and you're probably going to want to narrow your sites down to ones that are maybe offering weekdays or offering like dates that have been canceled, like last minute bookings. This might be tricky. It might be trickier than, it's definitely going to be trickier than it would be if you had more time to plan to find a venue. So keep that in mind. And keep in mind, once again, you might have to choose like a Thursday or Friday wedding. I bet you the Friday weddings, those are just as popular as Saturdays anymore, but you have to be reasonable. Some venues book out literally years in advance. So consider that, and those are going to be your first steps. And then once you have those things figured out, you want to send out your save the dates like right away, like as soon as possible. As soon as you have a date secured, get those sent out, because once again, this is an expedited process, and you want to make sure that the people that you really want to have there are able to get it on their calendar, are able to request time off of work if they need to, make travel arrangements, like whatever needs to happen.
And I think too, for the save the dates, one thing that you could do here, because especially since you have the expedited timeline, you can use a digital save the date and text it to people. There are a lot of different resources and like websites out there that will like do this type of thing for you, where you create your save the date, you send it out, and then it's like through a link, so that people can submit their information through there, so that it's even easier for you to get the full like actual invitations out there. So the save the date, if it's digital, I don't think anyone's going to care. And then you can use that to make it easier for you to get all the information you need for the real invite. So just so you know, like the digital save the date is a good option.
It's a great option. It's probably going to save you money as well, which is always a plus. And it's like anything that you can do to simplify and speed up these different parts of the planning process is really going to help you in the long run, because you really do need that final guest count for lots of things like catering and I don't know, whatever else. Okay, next, it's time to find your wedding attire. So for this, once again, a lot of wedding dresses are more custom made. So these can take, I don't know, what's the recommended timeline? Usually like at least 6 months, right, Caroline? Usually. So, maybe with your expedited timeline, if that's something that you do right at the top, maybe you're able to still get like a custom whatever that you're looking
Yeah.
for. But if you're really gonna like in a time crunch here, you might want to head to a trunk show, a sample sale, a box store off the rack. There
Yeah.
are lots of options out there, but you have to keep in mind that you might have to get a little creative or do something a little bit more alternative for this.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that we've talked about, and like if you haven't listened to our last episode, go listen to our last episode. We talk a lot about wedding wardrobe things. And one thing that I talk about there is the Anthropologie weddings. There's a lot of different things that you can get at Anthropologie weddings. It used to be called Beholden. And one of the tips that I have given in the past is that if you are on this kind of quicker timeline, there are a lot of places that you can go to, not just Anthropologie weddings, but you can get things off the rack. But I really do think that the quality of Anthropologie weddings is so good, and you can get some of their stuff pretty cheaply. So one of the times that you can go around is during the like, okay, if you're doing a quick timeline, you may not be able to plan for this in advance, but they do have a sale around the like Black Friday time frame. And they also do have other like assorted sales throughout the year that you can go to. And they also have special like almost overstock stores or older styles in these bigger warehouses, like kind of outlet type of feel, where they have things from not just Anthropologie, but also maybe from Free People or other places that you can get some things there. Those are great places to check out on a quick kind of turnaround.
Yes.
I was engaged only for like 4.5, like 5 months. And I got an Anthropologie wedding dress, and I had to make like no alterations to it because they have just such quality products that are like really made for women's sizing. Yeah, I don't know. I could go on a whole rant about that. Go listen to our last episode if you want to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, there are, like Caroline just said, with the Anthropologie, there are so many options out there. We talk a lot about those options in our last episode, but yeah, you can have beautiful wardrobe pieces that you can get off the rack and you can
Yes.
get whatever. So you're going to be just fine, but at this 10 to 12 weeks to go point is really when you need to figure that out.
Yeah.
Next thing to think about, are you having a wedding party? So if you are, you need to ask them, first of all, right away. Make sure that like they can make that commitment. Make sure that they don't have like a vacation already planned or something on the day that you're wanting to get married. And having a group is great, but it is totally okay to forgo the wedding party and simplify things if that sounds better to you. Like if that fits in your vision, maybe this isn't something that's super important to you, you can totally skip that. And like if you're having a wedding that you're planning super quick in 90 days or less, that's what we're talking about in this episode, then you're probably open to having more of like an alternative wedding anyway. Like there's probably things that you're breaking tradition on, and if this is one of them, that's totally okay to do. And then if things get too overwhelming, if you're listening to us right now and you're like, okay, that's like a lot of stuff and it sounds like I don't quite know how to figure that out, maybe you don't have the time for it, consider hiring a planner. We are so pro planner. Of course it is probably like a little bit of an additional investment. It is an added cost, but a lot of times they can end up saving you money and like saving you stress, like honestly, saving you so much stress, which I think is like worth a couple dollars personally.
Yeah.
They're experts at making miracles happen. They're experts in the industry. And when you're on a shorter timeline, it adds complications. So any way that you can have extra help to just get things super streamlined and make them happen is great. And they do usually have, I mean, obviously they have a lot of connections in the wedding industry. They might have a preferred list and they might have people that like in their corner that they can be like, hey, like we got a last minute wedding. I know that you might be available this weekend or whatever. They might be able to recommend different vendors to you, which is going to be something that's so helpful in this scenario.
Yes. All right. Now we're in the 8 to 10 weeks to go kind of time frame. And yes, we know that there are so many things that might already feel overwhelming at this point. We just went through a long list. But just know that because that you have this shorter time frame, you are allowed to cut and probably should cut a lot of the things that you don't need. So really focus on those big ticket items at this point and really cut out any extras. You do not need a bunch of like crazy food things. You don't need late night snacks. You don't need favors. You don't need all of these things. So decide what is reasonable to do for yourself then. As you're thinking about things to cut, maybe instead of cutting this thing entirely. Maybe you think about doing some of these things yourself. Again, though, you have a shorter timeline, you don't have as much time, so be very reasonable with this. But what you could do is you could stop at Trader Joe's, grab some flowers, and do a DIY bouquet. I think this is great. I think this is awesome. And it's also a fun thing that you can do if you do have a bridal party. You could do this together. Another thing you could do if you're great at hand lettering is to do some of your own signage yourself. But just think carefully about what is worth it to you. And maybe there are people in your life who would be willing to offer some of their services and some of their help, but realize that they also have a shorter timeline too. So be cognizant of that all around. At this point, also, you're really going to want to nail down those vendors. And you're going to have to stay flexible because some of these vendors that you maybe would have preferred may not be available anymore. But honestly, one of the things that I experienced with a shorter timeline was that because I had a reduced list to choose from, it actually was easier to make choices. It kind of under that framework of like, okay, I'm not now presented with like 20 options. Like maybe I have 5, and it was so much easier for me. And I'm an indecisive person. So it was nice to have a smaller list to go through. But some of those people that you might need to figure out are your caterer, your photographer, videographer, officiant. And also when you're hiring all of these vendors, make sure you get all of these details in writing. There is going to be so much that's happening so quick. For your sake, for their sake, like just, we say this in other episodes too, but I think with this type of time frame, it's even more important because you're going to be working with so many details so quickly, and just making sure that you have everything figured out and laid out is going to help everyone involved.
Yeah. And on that note, like, I know we talk about, I would highly recommend listening to our first episode about creating your wedding budget. That's going to come into play in all parts of this, but part of that, part of what we really dive into in that episode too is finding an organizational structure and sticking to it. So there's so many ways that you can keep yourself organized throughout planning, and so many of them are great. You just have to pick one that works for you and your fiance and really stick to it, especially like you're on this short timeline. Like Caroline just said, like, you're probably going to feel like you're in like a tornado for a while of like planning stuff. Like even if you're like okay with ditching a lot of things and, you know, foregoing certain whatever, there's a lot that goes into it. It's still a wedding. There's a lot of things that you have to figure out. So think about that. Find some sort of organization system for yourself and really stick to that.
Oh yeah.
The entire way.
And speaking of those organization things, this is also a really great time to make a bunch of arrangements so you can stay as organized and on top of things and just like check those things off as quickly as possible. So some of the arrangements that you may want to think about is any travel arrangements for your family and friends, making sure that they have a place to lay their head at the end of the night, whether that's a hotel, a cabin, wherever. Also any transportation needs. Do you need transportation between the ceremony and the reception, or do you just need transportation to the event venue itself and then you're fine? Whatever that is, transportation is also a big deal. Another thing you're going to want to arrange is any other hotel room blocks or any other things for the guests coming in. So family and friends, I kind of categorize itself because I think those accommodations usually look different, and then making sure wedding guest accommodations are also secured. And this is also a good time to start thinking about the honeymoon if you need it, because you may not do a full-blown honeymoon right now.
Yeah, there's really no rule that says that you have to go on a honeymoon, and definitely no rule that says you have to go on a honeymoon like the day after your wedding. Yeah. It's very expensive. It's an added expense. Maybe you're trying to save money, but also whatever. You can do a honeymoon later on. You don't have to do one. It's totally up to you guys. Okay, next, you'll probably want to register and make your wedding website so that your guests can get to shopping for your gifts. Make sure that everything is easy here too. I would definitely recommend for anyone to have some sort of wedding website. It makes things super easy. So everything's in one place, and there are a lot of free options for that too. So very simple, keeps it really simple for yourself. You want to book your rehearsal and your rehearsal dinner location. You can also like tap on a grandparent that has like a really big backyard if that's something that you want to do. Once again, booking locations for this stuff is going to tend to be a little bit more last minute as well. Places like restaurants or something, if that's where you're having your rehearsal dinner, will probably have more availability for stuff like that. They don't probably book out like as much, but It doesn't have to be anything like huge and formal, just so you know, with that, but it needs to be figured out at this point. You're going to want to reserve now all of the necessary party rentals, and linen. So this includes an inclement weather backup like a tent. So maybe you're automatically going to have a tent going on, you need to make sure that's squared away right now. But if not, you need to talk to your venue, and figure out what that backup plan is, or have one in place yourself. And then yeah, get those invitations in the mail, at the end of this. I know at the beginning of this 6 to 8 weeks, have your invitations, like you're about to get those out. So probably by 6 weeks you should send those out for sure.
Also, just in case you guys didn't know, we have a YouTube channel and you can watch us there. It's the Here Comes the Guide YouTube channel that hosts the Guy Gals podcast. If you were watching, you just saw me plug in my camera because it started dying. The battery on this thing sometimes really baffles me. But yeah, if you saw me like moving around, that's why. And if you're listening to it, now you know that you can watch us. And we would love for you to, I don't know, look at our faces, I guess. Sounds weird to say. Hey. All right, so now we are in the 4 to 6 weeks or 4 to 5 weeks to go. And by now you probably should have all the essentials lined up. If you don't, you should try and make sure that those get squared away as quickly as possible. But once those things are squared away, you can begin to work on the fun stuff. Do you want to purchase bridal party gifts, something old, new, borrowed, blue, pretty ceremony programs? You can fit all of those to-do tasks in here. One consideration you could also put here, just because we said like bridal party gifts, when I asked my bridesmaids, because I was on a short time frame, I asked them, like I just like texted them, called them, or I guess 2 of them I didn't even ask because I was just like, we had talked about it for so long that I forgot to like formally ask them. But I gave them big gifts right before the wedding. And that was almost like my bridesmaid proposal kind of thing for them. So I left all of the really important things, right at the beginning. Asking them was more important. And then buying their gift came a little bit later, kind of in this 4 to 5 week range where I got them their bigger, nicer gifts. Other things that you can do in this time frame is check your state's requirements and make plans to obtain your marriage license. We've talked about that in other episodes, that you really do need to make sure state to state it's different. And this is a really good time to get all of that squared away because some places have short time frames and some places might have longer ones. So go ahead and do that. You also will want to purchase wedding rings if you haven't already. They don't have to be expensive. You can get something that's a placeholder and then spend some more time finding something that you really want afterwards. I've also talked about this before. My husband and I did this, and he is still wearing his $30 Etsy ring. We had big plans to like replace it with something nicer, and we never did. You can also order wedding favors or do the DIY route. Also, if you do have a wedding party, this is a good time to give them a nudge to make sure they have all of the necessary attire. Yes, maybe they bought their dress, but do they need shoes, earrings, whatever else? And also start researching name change requirements if that's the route you're going to go. If you're not changing your name, awesome. If you are changing your name, it really is a good idea to start thinking about it now. There are subscription places like Newly Named. I think that's what it's called. That's what I used, and it was super simple. You put in all of your information for places that you needed to change your name, or subscriptions or different things that you had, and it sent you all of the information, all of the instructions, all of the postage for each of those individual items so that you could change it quickly and easily. So I would recommend that. There are probably other resources out there you could use for this as well, but start researching some of those requirements because guys, listen, name change is a long process. I am still actually working through it because I caught one place where my name wasn't changed correctly. That was a huge hassle. So honestly, start thinking about it earlier, the better.
Yeah, that sounds complicated.
Yeah, it's no fun, but whatever.
Okay, now we are going to talk. We're at the point 2 to 3 weeks to go. It's getting real. It's kind of crunch time at this point. You want to finalize and confirm these things. Your wedding vows is going to be the first ones, and the readings with your officiant, the menu with your caterer, the shot list with your photographer and videographer, the song list for your ceremony, cocktail hour, reception with your DJ and or bands, musicians, whoever's running your playlist. They usually will have some sort of system for this in place. Like they'll give you a platform where you can make a playlist digitally or whatever. You need to figure out who is giving toasts. And then the wedding night and honeymoon accommodations, if you're doing that, those need to be squared away. You want to also create your wedding day timeline. Your guests, your fiance, and even your vendors, they're going to need a game plan. And this is really important. If you have a planner, they're going to be really helpful in this. And then also, you should talk to your venue about this. A lot of times, they have some sort of like outlined timeline that they can hand off to you and share with your vendors. That's really helpful. And then you need to hunt down whoever has not RSVP'd yet. So annoying, but that's going to be part of the process.
All right, great. 1 week to go. And the theme of this week beforehand is to finalize. Give your caterer and venue the final guest count, day of timeline, arrange any seating and create the seating chart and or place cards. Pick up your gown or suit if you don't already have it. Confirm all the arrival times and finalize the wedding timeline with vendors and the wedding party. Put together your own wedding emergency kit. You can never be too prepared. Honestly, it's a nice thing to have, just to have some sort of emergency kit. Who knows if you are going to need eyelash glue, blister blocker, whatever else it is. And then pack for the wedding night and honeymoon or mini moon if you are going on one. This is a great thing to think about because then all of those things can kind of be squared away and you can just focus on the wedding and then you will already have the honeymoon stuff prepared for.
Now we're going to talk about last minute essentials. So I said it was crunch time before, like, okay, it's really crunch time now. So you need to figure out your tips in your final payments for vendors. Get those in clearly marked envelopes, hand them to the best man or another person. Maybe the maid of honor, instead of the best man. That what is it about me? I always feel like they're gonna be like up to no good. But yeah, that needs to be figured out. A lot of times those are handed out like at the reception to different vendors.
And another tip, although it's not necessary, but remember when we talked about it before that you might have friends or family that offer their services to you for your day. Maybe they do become the glam squad. Maybe they do become the DJ, whatever else it is. You should still show some appreciation to them. So if they did step up and work towards your wedding day in some capacity, maybe gifting them a mani-pedi or a nice bottle of Prosecco or gifting them a engraved Stanley. We know someone who did that for some of their vendors. So that's a really great thing to do for all of those people who stepped up and made your day possible, especially on this short timeline.
Yeah, it's a really nice touch. Not totally necessary, of course, but I think, no, I think it is necessary as when you have like friends or family who are really stepping in to help. Maybe you're not paying them or you're paying them less than they would normally make. Doing something like that, like showing your appreciation, I think is so important. Also, at this point, you need to assign someone to pick up your gifts and belongings after your reception. That's really important. You also will need to find someone to return the groom's tux and other rental items the day after the wedding. You need to make sure that all your wedding day items are packed and laid out the night before your big day. Seriously, don't like wait till the day of your wedding to do little things. If you're having the thought like, oh, I'll just do that tomorrow, or like, oh, you know what, like the morning of, I can take care of that. Like, that's a bad idea. It's going to be a stressful day. It's going to feel like a whirlwind. And like any way that you can alleviate stress, do it. Set yourself up for a really smooth day. And yeah, like take a few deep breaths. Make sure everything is ready to go, but enjoy this time. Like it's a really special time. And, at this point, you should have all of the hard stuff figured out. All of the hard planning things are done. And you can really just start to have fun.
Yes. And then after your wedding, congrats. You are newlyweds. You're enjoying it. It's awesome. And you're going to have another list of things to do after your wedding. One of those things being to write and send thank you cards. Do that the sooner the better, because the more you procrastinate, the harder it is to do those thank you cards, and then it just kind of sucks for everybody. I know one of my friends said that like technically you like have a year to send out your thank you cards.
That's a long time.
That's
you
a
will
long
not do
time
it if you wait that long.
No, just like do it while you're thinking about it. Don't procrastinate that. Complete your registry and exchange any unwanted or duplicate gifts, or take advantage of the percentage off that you get when you register at certain places. Buy any items that are still left on there. Have your wedding dress cleaned and preserved if you would like to do so, or you can sell it or rent it out, however you want to do that. Keep in touch with your photographer and videographer as they work on the albums. Typically, those things get delivered later afterwards. Like they don't have deliverables right away for you. That's okay because they're working their magic, but just keep in touch with them as they're working on that process. Just enjoy being married. Like that's the best part. And probably a lot of this process felt like a whirlwind and you maybe didn't get the chance to stop and appreciate it. So now's the time to do so in your newly wedded bliss.
So this, like, a big major to-do list is basically what we handed over to you, but hopefully this is helpful in taking away some of that stress and really giving you like a framework for how to plan a wedding in this quicker process. This is difficult, and I know that if it was something that I was doing, I would for sure need some sort of guide. So hopefully this is helpful to you. Like I said, hopefully that it provides you with that. But good luck to you as you plan your quick wedding. I'm sure it will be great. And I know that if this is something that you're doing, although there's a lot of reasons probably why you would have an expedited planning process, but I'm sure that, like, at the heart of it, you care more about your relationship with your partner and the marriage ahead instead of like the big wedding, and like you probably value like what's most important. So that's really great. And yeah, we're excited for you.
Yeah, so excited. Keep us updated on all your planning process things. We want to hear about it.
Yes, we always want to hear from you. And if you have any questions for us on anything wedding related or anything else, can't promise we'll answer like anything, but you can reach out to us at any time through our website, which is theguidegalspodcast.com. On our website, we also have our full episode library and lots of free resources for you. So check that out. You can also connect with us on Instagram at the Guide Gals Podcast. We post lots of behind the scenes stuff over there, and you can always DM us on that platform as well. We also are on TikTok at the Guide Gals Pod, and we are on YouTube. All of our episodes have a video component as well, and we are on the Here Comes the Guide YouTube channel. But yeah, that's where you can find us.
Yeah.
And this was fun. We're excited to be back with you next week with more wedding planning stuff.
Yes.
But
until the next one, cheers.
Cheers.